Chat, what is up? Today we have a different kind of stream, a little bit of a different one. We're starting on me first because I'm the most poor person. No, because it's a dev stream, I want to get some of the general dev streamy things out of the way, and then we're gonna hand it over to the one and only Eggsoup, a very brilliant mind in the community, who has been so gracious as to come on and talk. But before that, real quick, I know a lot of y'all are excited about the charged OG colors. That will be coming tomorrow. So if you're watching on twitch.tv/Brawlhalla, tomorrow with the start of the Mammoth Cup comes your opportunity to earn those viewership rewards and do that. Of course, signups for the Mammoth Cup are closed as of now. Of course, you might be able to sign up for the singles portion, but the doubles portion, not so much, because it's about to start. That is all happening tomorrow, Mammoth Cup. Other than that, of course, y'all might have seen the announcement on social media. We've got The Walking Dead coming to Brawlhalla in just a couple of days. So if you're ever curious about things like that or want to know what's going on, go over to our socials over at twitter.com/Brawlhalla. But without further ado, let's bring up this cool graphic to talk about Eggsoup, because some of y'all maybe aren't familiar with him, or maybe are only familiar with Eggsoup from the competitors, or from the the content creator side. He has been a longtime competitor, of course, first time ever Brawlhalla LAN champion, top 8 placements in 1v1 and 2v2s in majors for multiple years. He's been a long time player in the community. But without further ado, Eggsoup, what's up? How's it going?
Hi, Duke. Hi, chat. How's it going? So yeah, if you don't know who I am, I'm Egg. Like Duke described, I have been a long-time competitor, long-time community member. I also happen to make videos and stream and everything like that. In 2020, I haven't been able to compete because I moved to the West Coast. But from 2015 to 2019, I've been placing top 8 in majors. So hopefully that maybe gives a little weight to what I'm going to talk about today, which is ranked anxiety, tournament anxiety, and a lot of things like that. So I think that is something that our community struggles with on a pretty large scale, and people don't really talk about it. That is like those feelings of anxiety about ranking up, the feeling of judgment about, oh, I'm only silver, oh, I'm only gold, I'll never reach diamond, I'll never make it to the goal I want. And so that's what I want to talk about today. So yeah, I'm a little nervous, chat. Look, I normally stream in front of like 100 people, so you guys gotta like relax a little bit. But yeah, I know a lot of you are here for viewership rewards and everything like that, but this one time, this is to illustrate a point, chat. If you experience ranked anxiety, just push 1 in chat. Just type 1 in chat. I know it's on slow mode, so it might take a little bit, but push 1 in chat.
Oh, wow. I was actually going to be sarcastic, but no, it's actually a lot of 1s, and that makes a lot of sense because I know that you experience ranked anxiety. You're currently experiencing anxiety of a different sort. I've definitely experienced ranked anxiety, chat. I think most people have experienced it, and you're seeing a lot of 1s over in Twitch chat, and I'm seeing a lot of 1s over in YouTube chat as well.
Yeah, so that is the first point I want to make about ranked anxiety, is a lot of people don't really talk about it, and a lot of people feel guilty or feel lesser than because of it, but just look at all the 1s. Look at the wave of people. And that's really, really important to understand, is that you're not weird for getting ranked anxiety, you're normal. It is normal. Because what I'm going to talk about today is, first, I'll give you a brief outline. I'm going to define ranked anxiety, talk about why it happens. Then I'm going to talk about why we feed it and why it gets bigger. And then finally, I'm going to talk about solutions and things you can do to help it. All while doing so, I'm going to be doing viewer games. So if you want a chance to play against me, we're going to open up a lobby and everything like that. So yeah, hopefully this will be a fun stream. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Brawlhalla, for having me on your stream. Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of the presentation. Do we want to start the games right now?
Are you? I mean, it's your show, so you let me know when you're ready.
All right, I'm down. Lobby's open. We're gonna be playing on US West servers, so if you are a US East player, just keep that in mind because I am a West player. The lobby number is 708485. Oh my! Oh, that's you. Me. I was like, joined in real fast. Yeah. So the first thing, chat, to understand about ranked anxiety is that, like we saw, the wave of 1s, you're not alone and you're not weird. It's actually a normal function of our brain. So, all right, well, I'm gonna play in some Mako because Mako's new, and yeah, feel free to hop in. So, ranked anxiety, what actually is it? Well, let's understand what anxiety is. So, anxiety is a function of our brain. It's our brain working as it's intended to. And also, if I get caught off track, it's not my fault. I'm playing a video game, trying to win against viewers.
Yeah, it's hard to talk and play. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but yeah. So ranked anxiety, it's a function of our brain operating as normal, and the way that anxiety works is that essentially it's an evolutionary advantage. So our brain, the reason why we get anxious is because it helps us. It does help us. So let's say there's like a patch of grass or something like that, and you see something dangerous, and your heart starts to pump. Your hands start to shake, you start to get really, really nervous, really anxious about it. Why is that? Well, it's to basically pump up your brain, pump up your body to survive in the moment, because whatever is threatening you may end up being harmful. And so you want to escape that situation. And so let's say there's like something ruffling in grass. Well, it might be a tiger, it might be a lion, and either way you want to get nervous about it, because if it is something like that, you want to be ready to escape. You want to be prepared. And so your brain starts sending those signals to pump oxygen, to make your hands shake, to make your heart start pounding. And that's why you get those feelings in ranked anxiety. The thing is that that situation obviously is not the world we live in today. I mean, if you're like a hunter-gatherer, that's like different. If you're still hunting tigers, I'm not going to judge you for that, I guess. But then I also don't know how you're watching the stream, so yeah, probably not. And the reason is that our brains, the world they adapted or the world they evolved into, is not the world that we live in today. We are in a very, very different world. We have screens, we have computers, we have ability to access millions of different people at our fingertips. And that is just simply not what our brains evolved to do. So we have situations like something that seems inconsequential, like playing a video game, but we have ranked anxiety. We get the same exact response in our brain. So that's important to remember, is that literally ranked anxiety, what happens to your mind when you get anxious, is the same as what happens in those situations where it's like a life or death situation, because again, that's what our brain is just evolved to do. So I'm going to keep reiterating this point because I think it's really important. You're not weird for getting ranked anxiety. Your brain is functioning as it's intended to do. It's just in the wrong, or quote unquote wrong, situation. So that's number one. The next thing is that there are things that contribute to it, there are things that make it worse. So something like consequence, something like uncertainty. So to give a little backstory, for the past 2 months, I worked on this huge video, this hour and 10-minute long guide, where I talk about this exactly. So if something I say resonates with you, I highly recommend to check that out, because that's scripted, obviously not live. So the thing that contributes to that anxiety is uncertainty and consequence. I mean, there's a lot more, but in terms of what I'm going to talk about today, those are two of the huge bullet points that I want to take note of. So what does that mean? Well, I'll put it into terms that aren't Brawlhalla to hopefully, make some sense of it and to help illustrate the point. So I'm sure most of y'all are or have been in school at some point, and you've gotten really nervous about a test. That test has made you really, really anxious. And why is that? Well, let's say you studied for that test for hours and hours and hours. You know the information like the back of your hand. Everything is clear. You know what's going to be on it. Everything is fine. Are you nervous about it? Maybe a little bit, but not really. And why is that? Because you have a lot of certainty. You know what's going to be on it. You know the material. You're certain in your ability to handle it. But what happens when you only really study for that test for a tiny little bit of time? You're not really that prepared. You don't really know the material that well. Are you more anxious about it? I mean, absolutely. And why is that? Because you're uncertain. You don't know what's going to be on it. You don't know if you can handle it. And that makes you more anxious. So that's uncertainty. There's also consequence. And consequence is kind of like a multiplier to that uncertainty. So think about it in the test analogy. Let's say that test is like an extra credit test, and it doesn't matter at all. It's not going to affect your grade at all. It's not going to affect your ability to pass the class. Are you anxious about it? Probably not that much. Because what happens if you fail? Nothing. Like, it's fine. No big deal. But what happens if that test is the only thing keeping you afloat in the class? Like, if you don't do well on this test, you're gonna fail. There's super huge consequences for failing that class. Your anxiety, of course, goes up. And I think that's fairly straightforward. That makes a lot of sense. But how do we analyze that in Brawlhalla terms? So, ranked is a very good example of this. Tournaments is a very good example of this. And we can look at it as the uncertainty of who's gonna win the match. Because chat, this may be a shocker, but nobody really knows who's gonna win a match. I mean, if you put Sandstorm up against someone who's played for 2 hours, like, you probably know. There's like 99% chance Sandstorm's gonna win, but you still ultimately don't know. Oh my Mako just leveled up. It's kind of sick, actually.
Nice.
Cool. You still don't know who's gonna win, and that's really what it comes down to. Is there's an uncertainty in the result of the match, something you never fully have control of. Because when you go into a ranked queue, you don't know if you're going to win. You don't know if you're going to drop elo. You don't know if you're going to feel terrible after that loss. You don't know if you're going to rank down. And that builds a lot of anxiety because that's uncertainty. Remember, uncertainty is the thing that contributes to it, or one of the things that contributes to it. And so what do we do in that situation? we try to reduce the uncertainty as much as we can. And that makes logical sense, right? If something is uncertain, then you want to reduce it. Like, if you're not studied for that test, or if you're not prepared for that test, you want to study, and that reduces that anxiety. But the thing about a Brawlhalla match, and really the thing about a test, if you break it down into its finest parts, is that you can't control it. It will always be uncertain to us to a certain extent. I know I just keep saying certain over and over again, but it'll always be a little bit uncertain. Because unless you make the test, you can't actually fully know what's going to be on it. And that's why, even if you know all the material, you still get a little bit stressed. Because if you made it, then you probably wouldn't be stressed because you know everything that's on it, but you don't know everything that's on it. And the same is true for a Brawlhalla match. I mean, you can practice, you can prep, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but oh, I missed my recovery. But ultimately, you don't know who's going to win the match. And so that leaves this gaping hole in like our brains, and we're like, okay, I don't want to sit with the fact that I may lose this match. Like, the thought of losing sucks, right, chat? Like, we can agree on that. The thought of losing a match feels terrible, especially a match that'll make you rank down. And in terms of tournaments, a match that'll like eliminate you from the tournament. That sounds horrible. Alright, sorry, I'm kind of great sword stringing a little bit. I got sidetracked.
Got distracted by how well you're playing great sword versus. Like, oh,
but yeah, chat. Look at, okay, so we're in agreement there. And so what happens when we think about losing? Like, what happens to us? Like, feel free to throw out an answer, chat. Like, what happens when we do that? When the way I think about it, when we break it down into its roots, is we try our best to do everything we can to not lose. And what does that look like? Oh, I can only play ranked if I prep an experimental for 30 minutes first. I can only play ranked if I'm already playing well that day. I can only play ranked if I'm on a hot streak that day. I can only play ranked if I don't run into an Orion, if I don't run into a Scarlet, because if I run into those, then I might lose. You know, all of those things we do to avoid the thought of losing, to avoid the possibility of a loss. We're playing to not lose in those situations. Is that relatable at all, chat? Do any of you do that? Because I certainly have. I certainly do still sometimes. I'm sure we're on the same page there. But I just want to make sure, you know, I don't want to start going on a tangent there, and then I lose all of you. So I'm just gonna check in. Yes. Okay, everyone seems to be on board with that. Nice. Okay. So what if I told you, this might sound crazy, but doing that is exactly the thing that leads to ranked anxiety. I know, it sounds really weird. It sounds strange.
That's crazy.
Our solutions, it's wild. Our solutions to ranked anxiety is the thing that creates the ranked anxiety. I'm gonna let you sit with that for a second, and then I'll explain it.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to elaborate on that one, guy.
Okay.
But I do, so before you elaborate, I do want to reiterate something that you have been saying repeatedly, because I'm seeing some people that are coming in a little bit late, and they're like, "What? Psh, imagine getting anxiety from a game, blah, blah, blah." You know, and I do want to reiterate that it's actually incredibly normal. Is my mic a little low?
100%.
It's incredibly normal. Sorry, chat was saying it. To have rank anxiety. We did a little poll of the chat, a very unofficial poll, and it was a pretty unanimous poll that almost everyone in chat at some point or another had gotten ranked anxiety. So I do want to reiterate that it is an incredibly normal feeling. You know, I've gotten it, Egg's gotten it, and many of y'all in chat have gotten it, which is why it's such an important conversation to have.
Yeah, I get it all the time, like literally all the time. So if I'm allowed to get it, then you're certainly allowed to get it, chat. Because I've played this game for like 5 years, so maybe you can't tell by my gameplay though, because I haven't got the kill in a while. But yeah, thank you, Duke, for saying that. Yeah, that's really important, and that's why I stressed it so much in the beginning. But yeah, there are people coming in, so I appreciate that. Yeah, so where was I? I was talking about, oh yeah, the solution is the problem itself. And I think by the end of this little TED talk, that'll make more sense. But essentially, the way our brains work and the way that we function is we tend to stay in our old habits more than new habits. So there's a part of our brain, I'm not going to get into the science too much. I believe it's called the dorsal striatum. It's this part of our brain that is lower processing. It's like what controls a lot of dogs' behavior, controls like reptilians' behavior and everything like that. And its function is to maintain the status quo of whatever has worked. Because if you think about that, that is a huge evolutionary advantage. If you just keep doing whatever's worked, you're gonna stay alive. And so that's why it's really hard to break out of new habits. So that's one thing, is that breaking out of the habits that compound into ranked anxiety is very difficult. But what do I mean when I say the solution is the problem itself? I don't know how to phrase this without going on a super long-winded rant, so I guess I'll just go on the super long-winded rant. But essentially what happens, let's say you do prep for 30 minutes experimental first. You do not play if you queue against an Orion, or the moment you start to lose, you stop queuing. You only play when you're playing well. What does that do to the ranked anxiety? Does it make it go down, or does it make it go up? The answer is yes for both of those. It makes it go down in the moment, which is why we do it. So it makes us feel better temporarily, because it gives us a sense of control. If we only play when we're playing hot, only on our good days, then it gives us a sense of control over how good we're playing, over the chance of victory. But what that actually is us trying to control the uncontrollable. Because remember, you don't actually have full control over who wins and loses the match. Like, when you queue into the ranked game, you don't know who's gonna win. You have an idea, like if you've queued against a person, you've beaten them before, you have an idea, but nobody will have a perfect record forever against somebody, because there's always a chance that the other person will win. But us trying to control all those things gives us the idea and rewards the behavior of controlling the uncontrollable. And what is the thing that leads to anxiety, if you remember, chat? Uncertainty. And what really is the root of uncertainty? It's uncontrollability. Like, if you can't control something, you're uncertain about what's going to happen. And so, us doing all those things to control, to reduce our ranked anxiety, makes it bigger. The reason it makes it bigger is because it's feeding the loop. Think about it. If every time you queue into ranked, you do all of those things and your anxiety goes down, the next time you queue into ranked, you're going to need to do it again. And then you're going to need to do it again, and then you're going to need to do it again and again and again. And every time you need to do it, the compulsion to do it increases. Think about it. If every time you feel terrible about the thought of losing and you need to play an experimental for 30 minutes first, of course next time you're going to play it for 30 minutes in experimental. So that's the first thing to understand, is that us trying to control the uncontrollability is what compounds and makes the ranked anxiety worse. So the solution to ranked anxiety, or our solutions to it, are the things that feed it and make it even bigger. So what do you do instead? You accept the uncontrollability. Rather than trying to control it, you recognize there are some things that I will never be able to control, and that's okay. And I'm gonna work with it anyway, and I'm gonna keep playing anyway, and whatever happens, happens. And so this is the first solution. So in my video, I have 5 sections, and this is the first one. So this is a very abridged version of it. If you want more detailed, I highly recommend check out that video. It's my best video.
What's your YouTube?
Eggsoup. If you look up youtube.com/Eggsoup, it's literally the first video there. I feel weird plugging my channel, but you know what? I'm gonna do it because I'm proud of the video.
That's this is a very good video. I do want to kind of weigh in a little bit, because
go for it.
Your talking is obviously making a lot of people's brains start tingling and they're thinking, and I am too. So I guess, like, to kind of reiterate what you were saying, it feels like the statement is essentially that by doing these kind of pre-ranked warm-ups, for lack of a better term, it's almost like giving a false sense of control or a false sense of security. And,
absolutely, yeah.
Like, the subsequent result is that when you don't have control over that, because it's of course an uncontrollable situation, that then you end up kind of like feeding back into that, well, maybe if I warmed up more, then I would have more control the next time I do it, and it kind of does that loop.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah,
okay.
100%. And that's not to say, obviously, like, warming up is not bad. I probably should have said this is my bad. Sometimes I go super into examples, and they're a little more complex than the way that I'm presenting it. Like, obviously, chat, warming up is not a bad thing. Everyone's good for warming up, but it's kind of about, like, the feeling that you get why you're warming up. Like, the compulsion to warm up. Is it because you just want to warm up, or is it because you're so afraid of losing that you feel the need to warm up in order to start playing ranked? Like, those are two very different things. But yeah, Duke, you put it much more concisely than me. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. I actually really appreciate it, because I go on big loops a lot. So yeah, the first solution, so I'm going to present 5. So here's number 1. is also I probably gotta speed it up because I'm a little. Anyway, number 1 is to reframe your goals. So instead of having your goal be to not lose, focus instead on just playing one match. Because what are you in control of? Are you in control of not losing? No. But you are in control of the thing you're doing right now, the match you're playing right now. And so if you instead focus on just one match, and whatever happens in that match, you're going to do the best you can to win, and if you don't win, well, sometimes you don't win. That will help reduce the anxiety, because what feeds the anxiety is the anxiety itself. And if all of your brain power is focused on this idea that I need to not lose, your brain is going down all these thought trains and all these patterns that you've been that I described earlier, how your brain tends to enjoy doing the things that it's done before, because that's just one of the functions of it. If you instead choose to forego that and focus on something else, then all of that brain power that's going into the anxiety is redirected, and you aren't thinking about the anxiety anymore because you're fully focused on something else. And so that's being very present in the moment and saying, no, whatever happens in this match, that's in the future. That's some future result. What I'm going to focus on is what I can do right now. And the reason why that reduces the anxiety is because anxiety itself, by the way, I'm not a doctor, I should say this. It's not medical advice. This is Brawlhalla. I'm talking about Brawlhalla. This is Brawlhalla gameplay. I'm a Brawlhalla player.
Yeah, none of this is legal or medical advice. Consult your doctor and your lawyer.
Not that anyone, I don't think anyone thinks that, but just to be clear, I mean, I don't look like it. Anyway. So,
right, back to the point.
all that energy that is going into or what was I saying? Anxiety as a function, like by definition, is future oriented. I am worried that I won't lose. I am nervous about this test. Like, anxiety literally is about the future. So if you focus instead on the present, the anxiety just can't exist. It's literally impossible for it to exist because it doesn't exist in the present. It's impossible for it to exist in the present. So that's number 1. Reframing your goals. And if you're focused on improvement, if you're trying to improve, then I have a lot of specific tips for that in the video itself. But generally speaking, if you want to, that's the general advice I give. Focusing on one thing in the moment. And a bridged version of what I say about improvement is that the best thing you can do for yourself in that context is to focus on doing one thing. So when people try to improve, they try to improve their entire playstyle at once. But that's so stressful because what does that even look like? What do you even do? So I would say focus on one thing at once. And what is an example of that? So like for example in that edge guard, the Rhino I was playing against, they tended to jump really quickly after getting knocked off stage, and that allowed me to get that edge guard. So next time, like something to focus on if that's one of your problems, is the only thing that you want to focus on in the match is don't jump immediately after getting hit off stage. And that makes it actionable, that makes it something that you can actually do. Because improving, like what does that mean? That's like how do you improve? Like what do you actually do? It's like nothing. Like that's not a verb. But like not jumping off stage immediately, that's a verb. Like that's something you can do. So yeah, anyway, that's a super quick way of explaining it. Anyway, so that's number 1, reframing goals. Number 2 is ego. So I'm going to talk about ego. And if you remember, I talked a lot about uncertainty. This whole thing has been about uncertainty. But now I'm going to talk again about consequence. So if you weren't here earlier, the 2 things that really, really contribute to ranked anxiety are uncertainty about the result and the consequence of what happens if you lose. So, for example, at the beginning of the stream, I was nervous, right? And why was I nervous? I've streamed before. I stream all the time. Well, the consequence of me saying something stupid in front of 14,000 people is a lot higher than the consequence of me saying something stupid in front of 100 people. So, of course, I would be more nervous on this stream than I would on my own stream. It's the same thing in Brawlhalla. So if the consequence for losing is pretty bad, then of course we'd want to avoid losing even more. And ranked anxiety is all about avoidance. That's like the thing that, when I was talking about the solution that leads to the problem, ultimately that's avoidance. And so something that makes the consequence of losing even worse is our egos. Because what happens if you don't let yourself lose? What happens if the only way you lose is if the other person was a spammer? If the other person was passive, then you never really lost, right? If you tell yourself that the other person is worse than you, they're just using cheap tactics, then you never have to face the fact that you lost. And why do you do that? Well, because the thought of losing sucks. You don't want to think about losing. Like, I lost a match, the other person outplayed me? No. They were just a spammer, you know? If they weren't a spammer, if I was a spammer, I would win, you know? Those kinds of things. And really, what is that? I think that's fear. I think those thoughts are really rooted in fear. Because it's never really letting yourself accept that you lost a match. And again, why don't we want to accept it? Because losing sucks. Nobody wants to lose. And so we say, they only won because they're a spammer. If I was a spammer, I'd be good. And then you never actually become a spammer. And that doesn't make really that much sense, right? Because if you tell yourself, if I was a spammer, I would win. If I was passive, I would win. Why wouldn't you do it? That makes sense, right? You should do that if it makes you want to win. But you still don't do it. And why is that? Well, if it comes in fear, if it's rooted in fear, then it makes a lot of sense. Because what happens if you become a spammer, if you become passive, and you still don't win? That thought is worse than the thought of losing and having an excuse. Because if you lose and you have an excuse, you never really lose. But if you try your best, you try 100%, and you still lose, like, that hurts way more.
All right, Egg.
So we don't... Sorry, go ahead.
I gotta step in. Because this is your statements, I think, ring true for a lot of people. And there's one more component to that you kind of asked, but I don't think you truly answered, which is why I'm cutting you off now.
Go for it.
So you asked the question of, I lose to spammers, but I'm not going to become one. And I think you're right in that there's this weight of like, well, if I still lose as a spammer, then you have to accept the fact that you lost. But I think most people will, instead of getting to that conclusion, will just say like, because spammers have no honor or integrity, right? Same thing with like,
yep.
Oh, I won't weapon starve because I am morally better than that other person, as opposed
Absolutely.
to just admitting that like you just lost. So is there something that you can say to that point, or is it just like, well, they're just lying to themselves?
I think it's the same point, actually. Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. And yeah, no need to apologize for interrupting me. I ramble so much. My viewers know this. But yeah, I think it's the same thing. Because if you always have that kind of excuse and that sense of honor, what is that but a protective shield? Oh, don't look at the screen. It's a protective shield. That's the ego, because you don't want to sit with the fact that you lost. So your brain, what it does, it tries to protect you. It sets up these set of rules that, this person, they have no honor. They're not playing by the rules, so I didn't really lose because we're playing a different game. But what's important to know is that those thoughts are very self-protective, and they're going to be the things that really hold you back from ranking up, from improving, if that's your goal. And I think those are the things that also are going to make you feel worse in the end. Because what happens is, how do I phrase this? Yeah, so ego is like a protective shield. And when you have thoughts of ego, and like, what is a thought of ego? It's like, I would have won, but I wasn't really trying, so it's okay. And what that is essentially stopping yourself from like accepting reality, and that contributes to ranked anxiety because it makes it in your control. Like, if the result of the match is like, if you never lose, then you never have to think about the possibility that you might lose. And so that ego builds up, and suddenly you're better than other people. You're better than the people that beat you because they just use these techniques that you deem as unfair. And I think that's really important to recognize, because the way that you fight against it is that you choose to act in spite of that ego. So instead, recognize when you have those thoughts when you lose a match of like, this person only won because they're a spammer, so I'm fine, I didn't lose. Instead, try and redirect your mind and be like, you know what? Whatever they did worked against me, and I did lose the match. And that's okay. Oh, I think they may be lagging. I don't know what's going on with the Cassidy, but
yeah, we are playing on US West for those of you trying to join. Of course, it is an open lobby, so it's possible for people to join from all over the world. But we are in fact playing on US West, so just keep that in mind if you're trying to play against Egg while he's giving his dissertation.
It kind of is a dissertation. The script for the video is like 50 pages. Not even a joke.
It is a very good video. Again, highly recommend. Go over to youtube.com/Eggsoup and check out the video. It goes much more in depth than what he's doing here. This is kind of a condensed version. Egg, I want to let you know we're about 30 minutes in.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So I just want to let you know if you're trying to get to certain points.
Yeah. That's actually good timing. That's perfect. So yeah, that's ego. Again, I go more in depth into it in the video itself, but recognize when you start having those thoughts, and essentially a good way to do it is to think about value-based comparisons. So when you start placing the value of yourself or the value of others on these external things, and then you start judging either them or yourself about it, that's a very good sign that the ego is cropping up. And what do I mean by that? It's like putting yourself up on a pedestal and comparing yourself to them, and you're better than them because they're a spammer, or they're better than you because they're passive. Like all of those things where you start comparing yourself to other people, that's a perfect opportunity for ego to come up, because like what happens if you think that someone's better than you? Like that feels terrible. You don't want to feel terrible, and so your ego will creep up and say, no, don't worry, they're not better than you, like they're just a spammer. And so recognize when those thoughts come up, and try to be careful about making those kinds of comparisons, because they can be the thing that's stunting your growth as a player. That's just my opinion, by the way. So the third thing.
Before you get to the third thing. So on your comparisons, I think a lot of people will make the comparison, I am better than X person because of their playstyle, right? But what about the kind of aggressive opposite of like, I'm just a lonely gold 3 and I lose to every spammer, and like almost like to the point where it's overly confident that they are worse? Is that a completely different conversation, or is that like the same conversation just turned a different way?
I think it's the same conversation turned a different way. I'm not going to answer that fully right now, because that's actually the fourth section. That's actually number 4. But yeah, that's a great question. So number 3 is building up your fundamentals. So this whole time I've been talking about certainty, uncertainty, accepting that you don't have control over the result of the match, accepting that there are some things that no matter how hard you try, you will never be able to fully know what happens. But given that this is Brawlhalla, this is a video game, this is a skill that you can train, there are some things that you can do to increase your certainty. So in a match, yes, you have no control over what your opponent does, but you have control over what you do. And so building up your fundamentals is a great way to reduce that kind of uncertainty. Because if in a match you hit like a Blaster's Downlight, for example, and it's going to win the match, you're going to get the kill, and then you drop the combo, the next time you go into ranked and you hit that downlight, oh, you're going to be nervous. Oh, you're going to be anxious. Because you don't know what's going to happen. You feel like you don't have control over winning that match. So building up your fundamentals, practicing things like combos, things like edge guards, things like your strings, your dodge punishes. Those can help reduce that ranked anxiety, because your performance is less uncertain. Because at the end of the day, you can't control your opponent's performance, but you can control yours. So if you make your performance the best possible that it can be, if you work for that, that can also help reduce the anxiety. So that's like super quick. That's the shortest section. Now number 4, this one is this one I think is the most important in my opinion, and it ties to what Duke was talking about earlier. So I'm gonna ask a question, chat, and I'm happy to be wrong about this, but say your rank, or actually don't say your rank. Think about, do you think you would be like worth more if you were a higher rank than you are right now? So let's say you're gold, like do you think you'd be worth more? You think you'd be better person, all of those things, like more respected if you were a diamond? Do you think that's true, chat? Because I'm gonna tell you that I think you're wrong. Because I think you're worth.
Wrong which way? Because it's a yes or no.
Oh, that's a good point. I think you're wrong in thinking that you'd be worth more. Wrong. I think you're wrong in thinking that you'd be worth more if you're a higher rank. Because I think you're worth just as much, whether you're gold, whether you're silver, whether you're plat, whether you're diamond, whether you're top 32, whether you're top 8, whether you're number 1 power ranked in the world. Like I think you're worth just as much. And the reason why is because that external achievement, that rank, that accomplishment, that tournament result is not who you are. Because you have internal value as a person, regardless of those external achievements, those external accomplishments. But often we conflate those. We say things about ourselves, the way that we define our identity is in external things. We say, I'm this GPA student, you know, I have this job, I'm this position in the company, I'm all these things, and we judge our self-worth based on those external things. But I think everyone, literally everyone, has inherent intrinsic value regardless of those things. And this is weird. Why am I talking about this with Brawlhalla ranked? Like, why is that relevant? Because if you remember what I talked about earlier with how our brain tends to have these patterns and we stay in those patterns and everything like that, it makes sense that the things we'd apply to other things in our life are true also for things like video games, for things like Brawlhalla. So the thought that you would be worth more, you'd be more valuable if you were diamond versus being plat, or if you were diamond versus being gold, if you just placed top 8 versus everything, like versus placing top 32, I feel like is an extension of that thought that your worth is based on your external achievements, your external identity, and not just who you are internally as a person. That's just my theory. I'm happy to be wrong about that, but based on the people I've talked to, I find that to be the case. And based on the response in Twitch chat, I mean, obviously, it's like confirmation bias. But yeah, I feel like that's very true. And so how do you break out of that? Well, I think the first thing to understand is that your rank is not your self-value. Like, your rank is not your self-worth. As a community, we tend to respect players who are better. You know, the people we watch, the streams we're on, you know, the highest respected, most known community members are the best players. And that makes a lot of sense because it is a competitive game. But be careful not to conflate that with how just because someone is respected and well-known and well-liked and everything like that because of their rank doesn't mean that you're not that way because you're not them. Does that make any sense? Dude, does that make sense? I feel like I kind of talk a bit abstractly.
That was a little bit awkward phrasing. Like, I kind of get the core idea of what you're saying, which is that, like, don't tie your value to that elo number, like your value as a person. I do kind of want to ask, like, how do you define value, right? Because
that's a good point.
There's a lot of different ways to define that question. And if the question is like, I define my value as like a competitive player, right? A lot of competitors will be like, I am a top 8 finishing player. You know what I mean? Like, even your player card has that in the information. How do you not kind of conflate that information as, well, if I'm not consistently placing top 8, then I am lesser value?
Right. That's a great question. And I think that example that you just gave is perfect, because the question I'd ask is, if you take it away, are you still the same? Like, if you take it away, are you still worth just as much? If I lost all my placements, if I never placed in a tournament again, am I still worth it? And if the answer is no, then I think that's something to think about. Like, if you take away all those external things about you, if you take away your rank, if you never reach diamond, and that reflects on you negatively in terms of your self-value, then I think that's a place to identify. So, like, for me, over time, I've played this game for a really long time. So if I lose a match, my win rate is lower and people laugh at me. They say, ha ha ha, look at his win rate, or ha ha ha, look how he lost this match. Because I've played for a long time, because I've been able to recognize those things, that doesn't affect my sense or my perception of myself as a player. So yes, being a Brawlhalla player, being a content creator, all those things are part of, like, my identity at the moment. But if you take it away, I feel like I'm still the same person. If someone tries to trash me for being bad, I'm okay with that because I know where I'm at for myself. But I think for a lot of people, it can be very difficult for that. And by the way, this is going to be the 5th thing I talk about, which is non-judgment. But I hope, if anything I'm talking about resonates with you, that you're not like kicking yourself about it, you're not judging yourself about it, and everything like that. I don't know if that actually answers your question. I feel like I went on a tangent.
No, it does well enough. And I guess that before we get back to what we were at with the fourth point, because I don't know if you fully finished that, I do want to reiterate that again. I know a lot of people are going to be like sitting here listening. There's going to be a lot of them that are like, oh, that actually is, that's essentially me, and kind of to your judgment point, right? Things like that. Just, I want everyone to understand that these are all feelings that 90% of the community has gone through. These are all things, again, going back to that initial point of, like, almost everyone who has played the game has had or still has ranked anxiety. So don't be self-conscious about that fact. It's just something to be aware of. And of course, Eggsoup has just some brilliant talks about this. But I don't want people to be like beating themselves up because they are experiencing these things, because it's normal. That's one of the points that we want to get across, is that this is normal.
100%. Yeah. It's very important.
So yeah, to your fourth point, I don't know if you finished it.
No. So the reason why I'm talking about this is I feel like this is some people may think it's really weird, is because, again, consequence, uncertainty. Those are the two things to keep in mind about rank anxiety. And what happens when the consequence is higher? You get more anxious. And so if your rank is tied to your value, of course losing is going to feel terrible. Of course you're going to want to avoid losing as much as you can, because that is a reflection of you. That consequence is so much higher than just losing elo points. It's not about elo points. It's about what it says about you. That's how it feels. A lot of the time, you know, I'm painting in broad strokes. And so the thing that's important is that you got to recognize, okay, I feel like I said that kind of weird. I think that's something important to recognize, is that losing will always be bad. Losing will always feel bad, because of course we want to win. But it doesn't have to be as bad as we make it out to be. Because if we try to control as much as we can, if we try to put up these protective walls of ego, if we think about how this rank reflects poorly on our image and who we are, then losing will be much worse. And if losing will be much worse, we want to avoid losing as much as we can. And what do we do when we avoid losing? It's rank anxiety. And so the reason why I talk about it there, oh no, I saved them. Okay, we're fine. Is because if the consequence is lower, then the need to have that ranked anxiety, the need to avoid all these situations, the need to control whether you're going to win, the need to play only when you're playing hot will go down. So there's a chance that you try this, you accept that you don't have full control, 100% control over the match, and you feel worse. Actually, there's not even a chance. It's probably going to happen, because it's kind of how this thing works. Like, the thought of something not working, or the thought of something not being in your control is terrifying. It's super terrifying. And this is something that is kind of hard to explain, so unless you actually do it. But what's fascinating about anxiety, and it's kind of counterproductive, or this kind of anxiety, like when you're nervous about tests and stuff, is that when you accept that you don't have control, it's liberating. And it's weird to think about, because you would think the thought of not being in control, whether you win or lose, will make the anxiety worse. Logically, that makes sense. But what happens is, because we're running down all... Did this player just play, by the way?
No, it's a different Scarlet. I think...
Okay, thank you.
Just coincidental.
If your brain is working all these thought loops about what's going to happen if I lose, my rank is going to go down, and then I'm going to be worth less, and then people are going to make fun of me for my rank, and then they're going to laugh at my win rate, and I'm going to get like thrown all these toxic things and everything, and then I'm going to think that about myself. Like, wait, I lost my train of thought. That sucks, essentially. Yeah. And so, what's fascinating, though, about this kind of thing, and again, I can't really explain it, is that once you realize that that is not something that you can control, your brain doesn't have to worry about controlling it anymore. You don't have to do the things that contribute to ranked anxiety, because the ranked anxiety itself is not even in that world. Because again, it's future versus present. And I know I talk very abstractly, but I don't know. I'm kind of a zoomer. I don't know. My brain is kind of crazy, but
your brain is all over the place. But I do want to ask. So earlier, I asked the question of the people who are confidently bad, so to speak. Like they're confidently gold, or however. How does that relate? Because you said this was related to the fourth point.
So I think there's a very fine line, and it depends person by person. But the way I think about it is, a lot of the time when people are like that, when they're like very confident, like they're proud of being bad, or like quote unquote bad in their eyes. Which, by the way, if you're gold, I don't think you're bad. That's another topic. And for some people, that's like totally fine. Like they're not trying to be competitive. But for some people, that's kind of a mask. Like they don't want, or like the thought of them saying they're bad and they'll never win and everything like that is better than the thought of like actually being bad. Because if you own it, you're in control of it. Like if you own being the class clown, then nobody can laugh at you. If you own being gold and like you put that as like a what is the word? Like a medal of honor, then no one else can think you're bad.
Okay.
And
It's
so
like-
I think that yeah, go ahead.
It's like you're aware of it, I guess, is a good way of it.
Yeah,
It's like you're
I mean,
part of it. Instead of them
Right.
laughing at you, you're laughing with you.
Yeah, and I think that it can be dangerous because, and again, if this is like, this isn't related, this isn't everyone who does this, of course, but I think for a lot of people it is the case. So it's just something you need to think about for yourself, you know, decide if what I'm saying applies to you or not and everything like that. That goes for everything I'm talking about, by the way. Yeah, for a lot of people it is ego because it's a protective mask, because and by the way, these things aren't like binary. It's not like ego is one thing and then these the sense of self-value is another thing. They super go hand in hand. So if you own that you're bad, you never have to face the fact that someone else may think you're bad because you're in control of that. So that relates to all three of those. It's like controllability, it's that ego of self-protection, and it's also that sense of value. So I think letting yourself be bad is very important, because who are you but the person you are right now? Like you literally can't be another person than the person you are right now, and so it's okay to be like bad because that's just who you are, that's just where you are. So like contextually speaking, like for me, I make a lot of mistakes, I have a lot of bad habits, so in terms of me, like the context of me, like I think I'm not the best player I could be. Like I think I'm pretty bad, and that's okay because I can't be anyone else. And so I think a lot of the time, and this kind of transitions into the last section, a lot of the time we don't let ourselves be bad because we judge ourselves for the fact that we're bad. Like if we're bad, that's like a bad thing to be. So I want you to challenge that thought and think about how if you're a bad player, like of course relative to your own perception of yourself, that's okay. And don't judge yourself for that. Challenge. Give it a thought. You don't have to accept it. I just recommend it. So yeah, that's the 5th section. It's very short. It's just that these things, again, it's how we're literally intended to work. It's how our brains evolved over thousands of years. So the fact that you're running into these problems and the fact that you're thinking about them at all is extremely impressive because it's going against our code. It's going against what we're designed to do, the world we're designed to live in. And so it's going to be very difficult. And ranked anxiety is something that, again, a lot of us experience. You saw the number of ones in the chat if you were here. And the fact that everyone experiences that at some point doesn't make you weaker. It doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't make you weird. It makes you normal. It makes you like exceptionally normal. And breaking out of ranked anxiety or overcoming ranked anxiety takes a lot of self-reflection and introspection about your behavior and the things that you do and why you try to avoid ranked, why the rank matters this much to you. And those things are difficult to think about. They take time. And so really don't judge yourself for experiencing ranked anxiety. Don't judge yourself for falling short when you're trying to work on it. Don't judge yourself for being a bad player or being lesser than other people, because you're not lesser than other people just because you're gold and they're diamond. You're just a person who's gold and they're just a person who's diamond. So I hope what I talked about, resonates with you or helps a little bit. I know I'm kind of like all over the place because I'm also doing this live, and the video I made about it is a scripted 50-page video. So again, if anything I said resonated with you, I highly recommend checking that video out. I think it's the best thing I've ever made, like bar none.
It's a fantastic video. Egg, we're coming up on 150, so we've got about 10 minutes left in the stream. I do have a couple of questions I want to get to, and then maybe we'll, if we somehow magically have time during the giveaways, you can answer some questions from chat. But the first question I have is, you talked a little bit about the definition of people, or kind of how you define value of each other, right? And it's very important to separate yourself from your elo in terms of your evaluation, right? You're just because you're gold doesn't mean you are any lesser of a person. But on the other side, there is a pretty, I would say, ingrained culture of saying like your opinion doesn't matter because you're gold, or like I'm better than you, I'm a 2400 diamond player, things like that. Externally, aside from your perception of yourself, there is a culture of that. Is that something that you think needs to be combated, that like, or is that just like a thing you kind of need to accept as a player?
I think there's two sides to it. That's a great question, by the way. Also, don't pay attention to that Lance recovery that I got hit by. Yeah, I think there's two sides to it. So the first side is that I think the reason why it's such a common sentiment, the reason why people say it so often, is because there is truth to it. And I'm going to be careful with how I phrase this. So, yes, it is true that people with more experience and higher ranked and more skilled will likely have a good sense of the balance of the game and where things are at. And like, let's say someone says hammer is bad and they've played for 12 hours, and someone says no, hammer is really good and they've played for 2,000. It is true that the person who has played for 2,000 hours probably has a better sense of where the weapon is at, like balance wise, but that's not to say that the experience of the 12-hour player isn't true. So yes, while higher, and this is why a lot of balance is done for both top level players as well as lower level players, because just because someone is a lower rank doesn't mean that their experience is invalid. It could be true that their opinion is skewed by where they are in the rank. And like as you get better, some things may be easier to deal with than others, but just because of that doesn't mean that their experience is invalid, and I think that's important. However, or I should say, and the argument that people use in those situations where they go, "Oh, your opinion, it doesn't matter because you're gold. You know, I'm diamond, so what I say matters more than what you say." That is very dismissive of the experience that people have. So I would say that it is a problem. I would say if you do those kinds of things, take a look at that kind of thing, that behavior, and how that may be negatively impacting others, because it makes people feel like they're not worth anything. And the only way their opinion would matter is if they're higher ranked. And I think that contributes a lot to those feelings of external value being the only thing that matters, because it's a culture that says that that's true. Because if your opinion doesn't matter when you're gold, then of course it would matter more when you're plat, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, I do think that's a problem, and I do think if people had a more nuanced understanding of why things are the way they are, in terms of like, yeah, if someone's more experienced, it's probably a good idea to think about their opinion like critically, but the experience of a plat player or a gold player or a silver player is still their experience. So if something's not fun for a silver player, that doesn't mean that we should just never change it just because a silver player can't deal with it. There's probably a way to change it so that it's balanced for top level play as well as still engaging for lower level play. I don't know. I have a really long-winded way of answering things. But
well, that's fine. Okay, second question. To your point about the whole judgment thing, and kind of this acceptance of being bad, so to speak. This is not to negate what you say, but mostly that my takeaway of that is to say that I'm bad and kind of add on to that and say like, I'm bad and I'm going to work to rectify the thing that I feel that I'm bad at, or to say I'm bad and I'm okay with being whatever thing that is bad, because you know what, I only have 1 hour a week to play Brawlhalla and I accept that, you know. Is that a good version of that, or is that kind of a misconstruing of what you're trying to get across?
I think it's close. So I think the first example is true. So I don't know if I'll just explain it. I don't know. I kind of have a weird way of thinking about things. But in the video, I talk about growth mindset. So there's this theory in education called the growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and it's the idea of yet. And so if someone just tells themselves, I am bad, they're very static, they can't go anywhere. Like, it is accepting where they are, which is important, but it also means they're immobile. So that's fixed mindset. The growth mindset is, I am bad, or I'm not good yet. And that yet is, I think, what you're talking about in the first example, where it's like you're adding on to it. It's not just like, I'm just bad, that's how it is, I'll never be able to improve. It's like, I am where I am right now, and that's okay, and I can grow from here. So yeah, I think for the first example that is true. For the second one though, I'm hesitant to say because I feel like that borders the line of like making excuses for yourself, and I don't think that's necessarily true for everyone, but I think it can be true. So I wouldn't say like universally yes.
Okay. I do have to say this is probably going to be your last game because we are at 155, and then we're going to go into the big away. I do want to ask one more question, and then I guess during the giveaways we can see if chat has some questions that you feel open to answer. But this question is, you've given a lot of information just now. It's been about an hour or so of just like super big brain, high level information, not gameplay information. What do I do with all this? You know what I mean? Like it's like this stuff resonates with me. You know, I feel this stuff. I have an ego, or I put on that mask of saying that I am bad, things like that. What do I like? Okay, I recognize it. Now what?
Yeah. So the first thing is to tackle it one step at a time, because there is a lot, and this is something I thought about both when making the video and this like little conversation, is that there's a lot to think about, and if a lot resonates with you, it can be extremely overwhelming. So yeah, should I back out of the lobby, by the way?
Sure. Well, we're gonna go to our faces. You can just say it to the camera, and then I'm gonna open up the big one.
Okay. Yeah. So, what was I saying?
Overwhelming.
Right, overwhelming. Yeah, so it's one thing at a time. So let's say the thing that you want to focus on is that ego, that feeling of, oh, I'm bad. All that other stuff that contributes to it, like, that's fine. That's for another day. But right now, recognize the moment you have those thoughts of comparison, of thinking, oh, I'm bad, and these other people, and blah, 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 the things that I talked about earlier, just think about, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing right now. Acknowledge it and try and redirect your mind to choose to act in spite of it. So when you have those thoughts of thinking, oh, it's okay, I didn't really lose, they were just a spammer, try and think about, oh, well, maybe I did lose. And those things, step by step, over time, as you start to do it more, you'll start to experience those thoughts less and less, because your brain is like, oh, I don't need to do that anymore. Like, I recognize that I am like bad right now, or I did lose that match. And then once you start making progress on that one, you can start going to the next one, which is that feeling of control, and you only need to warm up for a while. So then you reframe your goal and to think about, no, I don't need to warm up to not lose. I want to warm up just so I can warm up. And then as you start to build that one over time, then you can focus on the next one. And the thing about these things is that because they're all connected, like that uncertainty leads to that ego, which leads to that value and all those things. If you start to work on one of them, everything else will be easier. And that's really cool. So I hope that helps, or I hope that answers.
Yeah, it does. I'm gonna say one thing and then ask one more question. Chat, if you're watching over on YouTube, Twitter, what have you, now's your opportunity to come on over to twitch.tv/Brawlhalla. Make sure you're logged in, and then you'll be entered into our big away, where we will be rolling for some community colors and then some meta devs after that. So now's your opportunity. Come on over to twitch.tv/Brawlhalla. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. If you want to say something, either say thanks to Egg or ask a question, because now is a great opportunity to ask him some questions. Pick his brain while we do this big away, because maybe you learned from the last hour, he's a very big brain player with some fantastic answers, which is why we asked him to come on. But before we get to that, I do have one last question, Egg. With all this information, right, you said kind of take it piece by piece. Is there a necessary order of sequential order, right? You have 5 points. Is there like you have to do step 1 and make sure that you are confident in your level 1 before you can get all the way to 5 and not judging yourself? Or is it like see which one resonates with you and work on that?
Yeah, I think it's much more the second thing. The reason why I structured it the way I did was for a video format. So I kind of trolled people. I told people this is the secret to ranking up. And so the first section where I talk about reframing goals is specifically focused on ranking up.
Okay.
And then I talk more about ego and stuff like that. So the 5 points, like if something resonates with you, and they're only organized into 5 because that's how I wanted to present it, but I think they're interconnected. So no, I don't think there's a set order that you need to do. I do think that non-judgment is important all throughout. That's just my personal opinion, but yeah, there's no set order. It's just whatever resonates with you.
Okay. I'm gonna let you talk to chat. I'm gonna be rolling giveaways in the background.
Oh,
If you chat, if you see your name on screen, it'll be whispered to you from twitch.tv/Brawlhalla. So again, make sure you're over on twitch.tv/Brawlhalla, and the Brawlhalla account will be whispering y'all once we get into these giveaways. But Eggsoup, if you want to answer any questions, go ahead.
yeah. Hi, chat. By the way, thank you so much for having me on the stream, Duke and Brawlhalla team and everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. All right, chat. Feed me some questiones. Someone asked, how did I learn all this stuff? So it's a combination of a lot of things. So number one is personal research. This is what I'm passionate about. Actually, number one is experience. The number one reason why I talk about these things, the number one reason why I have information and I have knowledge about it is because I experience it day to day. So if you think like, oh, look at this guy, he's just talking about it and I have to be the one to work on it. No, like I literally work on this every single day. Like I experience this all the time. And that's why I felt like I wanted to talk about it. Number two is school. So learning about the brain, learning about behavior is something that I'm studying in school. Number three is personal research. Again, this is something I'm very interested in. So I've watched videos, I've read articles and stuff like that to learn about behavior and anxiety and everything. And then number four is just learning about myself, being introspective, recognizing my own behavior, and just sitting with myself, like no distractions, sitting in an empty room, no music, no YouTube, no Twitch, no alt-tab, different browser windows to get viewership rewards, and not listening to me. What chat? You gotta listen to me, you gotta listen to me, you gotta listen. I'm kidding. I don't know why I said that. That was weird. But yeah, just sitting with yourself, allowing yourself to have time by yourself. Because like I had this thought the other day. I don't know if this is true, so I'm happy to be wrong. But you know how we have like these thoughts in the shower, and they're just like profound, or we think about something and we have these ideas. I think that's because we don't let ourselves have time like that, like literally at any other time. Because we're always listening to music or watching a stream or like I don't know, watching a YouTube video or playing a video game, and we don't let ourselves actually think. Because our brains are like incredible. They're super cool. And so if you give yourself time to just live in your own brain, you're gonna figure out some really cool things about yourself, in my opinion. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
I would echo that. I think that's very true. I think it's become commonplace to kind of have all these general distractions, and I think I'm way older than you, like by like 50 years, but something that happened to people in my generation is that there became a trend of kind of actively choosing to unplug, right? Turn off all of your electronic devices and maybe even like go off into a cabin in the woods just to spend time with yourself and nature. And I think there's some kind of equivalence there of like, all right, turn off all these distractions and go and be by myself with my thoughts and or with just like the world around me and start to kind of have that presence that you were talking about a little bit earlier.
Yep.
So I do kind of want to echo that. I think there is a lot of merit to that idea.
100%. I fully agree. So like one of the things that I love the most, I live in California, but the air quality right now is pretty bad, so I'm not able to do this. But one of my favorite things to do is to just go on a run just for me. So like I'm not running for anyone else. I'm just doing it. I'm gonna say I'm gonna run up this hill, and I'm just gonna do it. And like nobody can take that away from me. Nobody can say like, oh, you're a bad Brawlhalla player. You're a bad runner. No, like I'm just doing it for me. And that feeling of just me against the world, and you know that rush of the wind in your hair, and then like that feeling. I don't know if anyone runs in chat, but there's this moment when you hit your stride, and
runner's high.
It feels like, yeah, that runner's high. Like your legs, you don't even feel them. You're not even breathing heavy, and the only thing you can do is just smile. It's amazing. It's a wonderful feeling, and that kind of thing I think is very similar, because that's the moment we're not distracted by anything. We're just fully present, and that's kind of the goal that I talk about in Brawlhalla.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you're seeing any good good Twitch chat questions. And if not, I do want to kind of give some love to YouTube over here. I see somebody, Mark Mathura, saying, Eggsoup, you combine psychology with video games and are passionate about both. Man, what a legend. So I just want to let you know that some people in YouTube chat are appreciating things that you're giving about right now.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed me rambling for a while.
It was a good ramble, I have to say. What are we giving away? We're giving away stuff over on twitch.tv/Brawlhalla. Again, you don't have to say anything to enter. It's just automatically entered. I think I just switched to metadev mode. If not, we're going to fetch real quick. But just be on over on twitch.tv/Brawlhalla and you can be entered into this giveaway where we're giving away. We just finished giving away community cards. We're going to give away some metadevs in a second.
What if I won? That would be crazy.
I specifically took your name out so that you wouldn't, because I didn't want them
Well,
to, you know.
Didn't really have to go and do that though. It's fine. It's fine. All right, chat. Any questions? It's on slow mode, so it may take 30 seconds for people to ask, but I'm happy to answer a couple more if we have time. Oh man. Okay, I gotta.
Oh, okay. So this is, I guess, a general question from YouTube. But the question is, does all of this information that has been given throughout this stream and obviously on your YouTube, specifically with this concept, is it specific to ranked anxiety, or can it be expanded to Brawlhalla as a whole, or maybe even, let's go even more general, can it be applied to other facets of life?
100%, 1000%. So the way that I structured my guide, and the reason why I made it focus on mentality, is it's kind of the way I used Brawlhalla as just a microcosm, as just an example to talk about these larger things. So something like that anxiety you get from tournaments, that anxiety you get from ranked, is the same function of your brain that happens when you're really nervous about that test, or you're really anxious about if you're going to get that job interview. Because like the thing that really stops us from like doing that job interview, for example, is the thought, maybe I won't get the job. And that is the same thing as maybe I won't rank up. Our brain has the same function. So absolutely 100% the things I talk about, it's all about behavior. So Brawlhalla is just the output of the behavior, but like the inputs of what you're doing, I think is it can be applied to a lot of different things. Wow, there are a lot of questions that are going.
Okay, well, we're gonna come up on time soon. We're coming up on the last two giveaways. Eggsoup, real quick before we close out and decide to raid someone, where can people find you? Where can they find more information about the stuff that you are talking about right now? And where can they follow you? Please don't say your Twitter.
Just yeah, kidding. Don't follow me on Twitter.
Don't follow Eggsoup on Twitter, but everywhere
Do not
else.
Follow me on Twitter. Yeah, I'm Eggsoup everywhere. You just look up Eggsoup on YouTube, Eggsoup on Twitch. Actually, I think I'm gonna stream after this, so you know, catch me live there.
Boot it up right now.
Okay, I'll
raid you.
Right now.
I'll do it
right now. Well, I'll have to take off my cam though. Yeah, so you can find me everywhere, Eggsoup. If you go to youtube.com/Eggsoup, the very first video that pops up is exactly what I'm talking about right now. So if you're looking for it, that's all you gotta do. You just gotta go to youtube.com/Eggsoup. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you so much again for having me on. Thank you, chat. Hearts in chat, please, for everyone. And thank you for having me.
Why not Twitter? Eggsoup is a personality. The thing that you're seeing on this stream is a very polite version of Eggsoup. It's fantastic, and it's one of the reasons why I absolutely adore Eggsoup. When he goes onto Twitter, that's the other personality. That's the soup part of the egg, and it's a whole other beast. Sometimes there's fantastic stuff, but sometimes there's very goofy things that I still adore, but are definitely not as cerebral. Let me know when your stream's up, and I'll hit that raid button.
Okay. I am. It'll probably take like 30 seconds for it to pop up. Oh, we already got people in offline chat. That's crazy.
They're all getting ready. Again, thank you everyone in chat. Y'all have been so incredibly kind. Eggsoup, our special guest for today, coming in and talking about ranked anxiety, and y'all have been absolutely amazing, giving him so much love. I'm seeing in Twitch chat.
Wow, thank you guys.
And it's very appreciated because he's our special guest in our house, and we want to make him feel special.
Yeah, and thank you, Duke. You're a great host and keeping me in line because I go all over the place. So I really appreciate you.
I didn't do a lot, honestly. I was like, I'm just gonna let you go, and I'm just gonna sit here and watch you destroy people and laugh about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Again, you can check me out Eggsoup everywhere except my Twitter. Don't go there. And yeah.
All right, you up?
I'm up.
All right.
We're live.
We're gonna send everyone on Twitch. You're gonna be going over to Eggsoup. And thank you again, everyone, for watching. Without further ado, Eggsoup, make a face for the Twitter, and we're gonna be out.